Welcome back. In this Azure Architect series session, we'll discuss about Azure subscription. Okay, so when it comes to cloud adoption or when it comes to enrollment process or procedure, s- designing a very good subscription model is very important and vital. And they play a very critical role when you're designing for large scale Azure adoption. Okay, so this particular session is primarily around Azure subscription, and we'll talk about how to deal around this enrollment model. So subscription hierarchy, or we call it as enrollment model, is key to a successful governance and administrative model within Azure. So choosing the right suitable model is a major decision required during the initial workshop with the customer. Okay, and it must be based on the customer business requirement. So I'll guide you through how to do that properly, and then what are the different strategies you can follow along. And I'll also help you with what are the principles behind subscriptions and what are the considerations that you need to make. Definitely, like when it comes to a larger organization, multiple subscription might become a complex thing, but we'll also see how to deal with that. But at the end, customer requirements will drive the structure of subscription, the hierarchy of subscription. So let's see how to do that, how to create a subscription, what are the different options, and how do we go about it. Okay, so when it comes to subscription, it is a logical container within Azure management group hierarchy. So let's do one thing. Let's get into the first important classification. So in Microsoft Azure Cloud, we have 4 levels of management hierarchy. You can create management group, subscription, resource group, resources. Our primary focus on this particular topic or video session is on subscription. Okay, whereas these two things are some additions to Microsoft Azure management scope during the journey of last 10 to 15 years. So subscriptions is there since beginning, but then resource group got added to Microsoft Azure management hierarchy in 2014 when Microsoft transitioned from Azure Service Management model to Azure Resource Manager model. So there used to be two different administrative models, and there was an overlap between these two models for some time between the Azure Service Management and the Azure Resource Manager model. And with Azure Resource Manager model, subscription is still an administrative boundary, but subscription has become no longer needed as an administrative boundary. But subscription can still be used as an administrative boundary. Okay, but more now, resource group is used as a administrative boundary plus any application categorization or any business unit categorization. They are able to do it with resource groups. Okay, since 2014, so the logical unit called Azure Resource Manager or the resource group is able to fulfill certain things that subscription used to handle earlier, like the management, administrative boundary, security boundary, and so on. So when it comes to role-based access control or when it comes to granular access, now organizations are able to do that at this resource group level. So now with resource group taking some portion of the management boundary, and we also see something like management group, which was introduced in the recent 3-4 years back, where management group are also helping you with segregating the workloads or segregating the resources based on the administrative security boundary or management boundary. So management group is also taking some portion of segregation from subscription, but still subscription plays a major role when it comes to billing agreement. Okay, so subscriptions are primarily, I would say in simple words, it's a billing agreement or it's a billing unit which um, which provides the complete detailed usage report in terms of costing of a particular customer. So subscription is a billing agreement between customer and Microsoft. Okay, so subscriptions can also be used as a management boundary, access control boundary, even if you have some applications which can grow like beyond the expectations in terms of compute, memory, and storage. You can also go and have a separate subscription for them to handle the service limit and the scale. Okay, and subscriptions also play a very critical role when you're designing for large scale Azure adoption, because if you look at here, when you talk about the enrollment model, subscription is the core. So everything starts with subscription. Okay, so we can discuss about this, and we need to understand a lot of critical factors before we go and uh, set up the subscription or set up the enrollment model here. So subscriptions has to be set up based on the customer current setup, right? So customer environment categorization, their ownership and governance model, the organizational structure within the customer environment, the application portfolio. So these four things, or these five things, are very important to understand before we get into the subscription designing phase. Okay, so in principle, subscriptions are a billing agreement or a billing unit, and it can also be used as an administrative security boundary to segregate resources based on the security scope. And even a lot of organizations have a separate subscription for security and logging, so that the public cloud security team, or the security team who does the auditing, or external vendor who want to have access to some kind of data, we need not provide them access to the actual workload or the application workload subscription. Instead, we can provide access to the subscription where only the auditing data and the log files are kept for security regulatory requirements. And also with subscription, you can also deal with role-based access control based on their role and the different application teams access requirement. You can also provide fine-grained access control, but it generally nowadays happens at the resource group level, where the more granular role-based access control for assigning administrative rights at the resource level is being handled at the resource group level. Okay, so subscriptions are mainly now focused on billing agreement, where the financial team or the FinOps team, financial operations team, they actually go and see subscription just about a billing categorization container. Okay, but in general, in most of the small to medium size organization, subscription will be the first container that you create. Okay, even though we have a management groups are mainly used when you have an environment which is having a lot of subscription. Okay, if you have multiple subscription and we go and create management group, or else subscription is the first container that you create, and whoever creates the subscription, that person becomes the global administrator for that specific subscription. Okay, so these are some basic principles, and we need to consider certain things when you are designing and discussing about subscription. So subscription as such does not cost you anything, but then whatever resources you create inside the subscription, definitely they are the ones which add up to the cost. Okay, so also consider the subscription limits into account. There are some limits in terms of the resources that you create. Even you can go and configure quotas to restrict the resource creation at the subscription level. And generally, we should plan for multiple subscription, but the best practice or the initial thought should be to minimize the number of subscription, because like when you go and add more subscriptions, definitely it complicates things. So you can plan for multiple subscription, but don't over create the number of subscription. And also don't be afraid to have multiple approaches in the design. I'm not talking about having multiple subscription, but don't have multiple approaches in the design, so that customer has the option to go and decide which one will be a suitable strategy for their organizational requirement. I'll help you through what are the different strategy you can propose, or what are the different strategies that are there in designing subscription. And subscriptions are global in nature. Okay, you can create one subscription for resources being created for different regions across the globe. Okay, and when it comes to consideration, we should definitely consider a lot of things, but these four areas are key to understand and set up a proper subscription hierarchy or enrollment model. So you need to understand what is the current management approach, whether they are a distributed team, whether they have onshore offshoring kind of support model, whether they are a single team, and how the role-based access control works in terms of different service lines or support group. What are the security requirement? What kind of application legal requirement they have? What are the compliancy requirement they have? Whether they will need to have SOX compliance or GDPR for their data, and we need to understand what kind of security, legal, regulatory requirements they have, so that we can understand and set up the subscription to fulfill that. Similarly, we need to understand what are the number of different environments they have, like production, non-production, sandbox, dev, pre-prod, UAT, SIT, and so on, and also the connectivity requirements, whether they want to have single point of inbound into the Azure locations, or they want to have multiple regions and they need to connect to different data centers across the globe. That will help you to understand how we can design the subscription and also deal with the networking related resource creation. So next one is the application requirement. We need to understand the data flow and the compliance, how the application connects to each other, whether there are any application outside of Azure in software as a service model in other clouds where we need to interconnect them, or do we have any databases outside of Azure platform, like in Oracle Cloud or in on-premises, to connect the application to the databases. We need to understand the flow, we need to understand the integration points, and plan accordingly. So next one is a kind of important note to understand. So multiple subscription, definitely it is a complexity, but that doesn't mean like you cannot deal with that. It's like if you make proper use of the management groups and proper use of the resource groups, then you can deal with this subscription in an easier format. But when you are having multiple subscription, there will be more connectivity in terms of network to manage. There will be more security aspects to manage because you have multiple subscription, more identities to manage. Potentially, there will be a lot of express route circuit you need to buy, and also you need to set up a lot of landing zone aspects like IP address space, network gateways, network circuits, virtual networks, subnets, networks, security groups, routing tables, and so on. So there will be duplicate provisioning and management because of the multiple subscription concept. And multiple subscription concept are going to happen though, even though if you are designing with very less number of subscription to start with, over the period, definitely subscriptions will grow along. Okay, so in especially in a large to very large organization and Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies, definitely I see subscriptions gets created over the period, and there are certain business factors or business critical elements that drive this. Okay, I'll talk about the business critical elements that drive this. So there might be some additional cost for data inbound and outbound between subscriptions. Also think about it and explain this to the customer that we need to try and reduce the complexity by having the adequate number of subscription. So with all this said, customer is the one, or customer requirements is the one which drives the structure for the subscription hierarchy, the enrollment model. So everything and anything that we do, it has to be derived from the customer requirement. So we go and understand their organizational structure, their support model, their technical alignment, the service lines, the functional alignment of their customer, and then we need to understand how their departments are categorized, how their applications are grouped, how their environments are classified, what are the inbound and outbound traffic requirements, and the access requirements, and so on. So all these things has to be understood in greater details. And on the other side, we also need to understand the business priorities, which will end up making us creating more subscriptions or additional subscription. So when the customer is innovating or trying to do some re-architecture, or they're trying to do some kind of modernization in the cloud, definitely during the adoption, there will be a lot of experimentations happening. So during this innovation phase, there will be a lot of separate subscription has to be created to provide them the benefit or luxury to go and experiment a lot of things. And when they are migrating, we'll also see a lot of new subscriptions popping up, and because of the cost aspect or the billing strategy, there will be more subscription even based on the operation support group from different regions and different locations, there will be more subscriptions. Even there will be more subscriptions when it comes to security and governance, where there might be some application which needs business critical touch, like for example, it might have to adhere to some GDPR restrictions, or it might have to follow some SOX compliance, or HIPAA compliance, or PCI requirements. So that those applications have to be placed into a separate subscription to deal with the security and governance. So at the end, the customer requirements will drive the subscription structure, or the subscription model. So there are many strategies that are available, and these are the 5 strategies which can suit for different business requirement. Okay, so workload separation strategy, application categorization strategy, functional strategy, business unit strategy, geographic strategy. These are the 5 different strategies that we can apply to any customer environment. Either it can be a small or a big sized customer, very large enterprise, Fortune 100 companies. So you can definitely apply these design strategies, and you can provide them option to choose which one will be a better implementation strategy for the customer environment. Okay, so let's talk about how to, before getting into all the strategies and so on, let's talk about how to create a subscription, and what are the initial steps that we should take when it comes to a startup or a small to medium size organization. Then we'll go and deep dive into the large to very large category. Okay, category of organizations. So you should start with creating 2 subscriptions, one production and non-production. This is the basic fundamental step that we should take. Okay, you should not go and create too many subscriptions, but there should be bifurcation. There should be segregation of the environment to start with. So there should be at least 2 subscription, one production and non-production, so that you get a lot of benefits that are listed below. The approach has got a lot of benefits. The primary benefit will be the creating a security boundary, so that anything on the non-production will not impact the production. And you also can apply the development test offer subscription or the plan to your non-production environment, so that you get a lot of cost saving there. Okay, even the lateral attack, or even the spread of any ransomware or malware can be absolutely avoided when you have separation or segregation in terms of the environment. So this 2 subscription approach definitely have a lot of benefits. It creates a security boundary, it creates a resource management boundary, and it makes it very simpler and safer to play around with production and non-production environment. So next is the Azure development test subscription that you can apply to your non-production workload, so that you get a lot of offer, a lot of discounted rates on your Azure resources, Azure services, as well as the licensing model also. Okay, production and non-production environment often have different set of policy requirement, and ideally it should have to be the same. We should have the exact same policy, procedures, and stuff, but still, like certain organization, they might have to have a different policy for certain requirements. So we can typically get them aligned to that. So for example, secure workloads like payment card industry workloads typically require other policies in order to achieve compliance. So in such cases, you can, instead of using a separate management group to collate the workload, you can use a subscription, and without having too many management groups, you can handle it within the subscription level. So here, yeah, you can definitely have a separate subscription for testing purpose, and you can enable it and handle along. So when there is a lot of innovation that is happening in a customer environment, if they are if you know that your organization during the cloud adoption strategy or journey, they need to do a lot of experimentation, or they require a lot of innovation, what you can suggest is you can have one more set of subscriptions which is primarily used for doing a sandbox kind of thing. Because like you might have a lot of vendor relationship, different application support vendor has to get access to your environment, and you have to work hand in hand with them. In such cases, instead of allowing them access to your production subscription or your uh, the subscription where your other applications are stored, you can have a separate sandbox subscription where you can go and do a lot of experimentation and innovate things, and you can apply the security policies to keep the test subscription isolated from the production and the non-production workload. Even you can apply the Azure dev test offer to get a lot of cost benefits and the what do you call, yeah, the cost related discounts. So next one, if you know that the organization is going to ramp up very quickly, if your organization is planning to have a lot of virtual machines and resources created in Azure in the next 1 or 2 years, then definitely you should have something called shared services subscription, where you can go and host what do you call, your shared services like your file transfer, Active Directory, your DNS services, or any utility services in the shared subscription, including the interconnecting network components and other essential shared services thing. Even the shared files or the file transfer services, you can host it in the shared services subscription. So this is another model where you can have production and non-production, but in addition, you can have a shared subscription also. Okay, so next, when it comes to naming a particular subscription, okay, so there is no hard and fast rule, but then what I would suggest is like just have the company, department, product line, and environment covered in your subscription naming. So I have a separate session on how to do a naming, proper naming convention. I'll also share that shortly. But then this particular topic is mainly to have a subscription naming convention for your I mean, for just for your subscription. Okay, you can have a sample name like this. Okay, next we'll talk about the strategies one by one. Okay, the very first strategy is about the application strategy. This is the most widely followed strategy. Each department contains different type of environment, non-prod, prod, and we might have to create separate applications, separate resource group for applications in the organization. See, different application will have different requirements. So some of them might be mission critical, some of them might be a normal application, some of them might be utilities, some of them might be business critical. So we need to isolate them or segregate them from the non-critical workloads. And also there might be some application which will have data which has to adhere to some data privacy requirement, GDPR, and other privacy requirements. For example, even the application that are part of your COGS, I mean, they call it as cost of goods sold. I mean, cost of goods sold, where you'll have to have a separate accounting, billing governance, separate focus from the financial team. In such cases, you can also have a separate set of subscription for them, or a separate subscription for all the workloads, which has to fall under the same category. Similarly, application which has to have some regulatory compliance like HIPAA, PCI, FedRAMP, and other legal requirements, they can also be put into a or combined together into a separate subscription, so that you can apply the policies and you can handle the situation in a much better way. So organization footprint, when it grows, more subscriptions are typically created because of the nature of the application. Okay, so if different application have different criticality, different compliance requirement, different access control requirements, and different data protection needs, then you can go and segregate them based on their differences in terms of their role or the workload category. Okay, so this is about the application category, whereas you can also split up the environment by the workload or the environment also. You can have a separate production and non-production subscription or management group. Within that, you can go and have the workload kind of segregation. Most of the organization, they follow a similar approach, what we are seeing here, okay, in terms of workload segregation. But a lot of other organizations, they also follow functional strategy and business unit strategy and geographic strategy, because when it comes to a lot of organization, they'll have separate accounting, separate billing within their organization to finance team, sales team, IT teams, HR, and other business units. So you can also go and create a separate subscription for each of them, so that you have a proper accounting boundary or billing agreement with their respective internal functional units. Similarly, you can also go and segregate them by business unit, where you can have separate subscription based on your organization business structure. Okay, based on the division, based on the profit loss category, you can go and group them. Similarly, based on the support geographic strategy, a lot of organization will have regional support team in order to have local language advantage, and also in order to have the follow the sun strategy. There will be a lot of organization which will have local IT team and regional IT teams, where they might need to follow separate policy, different vendor relationship, maybe like some region, some database vendor or some server hardware vendor will be doing better. So they might have to choose their vendor of choice. And in such cases, you can go and create a geographic strategy where the regional teams are supporting it. So I have seen a lot of customer environments where they'll have a separate technical support group or a regional IT manager for each of the region, and we might have to have a separate subscription based on the support service model also. And in large to very large organization, you will see a mixed subscription strategy where you will see using the all the combinations. See, for example, application strategy, and then the workload strategy and the geographic strategy. There might be some mix of strategies combined together to meet up the business requirement or the customer requirement. So management group, it can go up to 6 levels a day. That doesn't mean like you have to have 6 levels deep. It can go up to 6 levels deep, and then this depth gives you the flexibility to create a hierarchy based on your organizational needs and customer requirement. So this is just an example where you are segregating the production and non-production, and also you have created management groups because you have different management team from different geographical regions. So the very last set of information that I'm going to share is around the different subscription options that are available. Different subscriptions are available from Azure that is tailored to fulfill different requirements from different customer environment. See, if you are just starting with Azure, and if you want to uh, learn and do some proof of concept or development testing, you can start with the free tier subscription, which most of you might have created. So this is the one which you get when you go and create an account in azure.microsoft.com/free. You get to create a free account, and then the free account is tied to a limit. For example, the first month you'll get $200 credit, and you can use the $200 credit to create Azure resources and services for the first 30 days. And then later, for the next 11 months, you can go and convert it into a pay-as-you-go subscription and start creating services which can be again always free or free for 12 months period, so that you don't have to pay any additional cost to it. And if you want to have proper support, and I'll explain about the support plan in upcoming session, but if you want to have proper support and support plan, you need to definitely go and convert it into a pay-as-you-go subscription or enterprise agreement to get proper support and monthly charges based on the subscription. And if you are a student, if you don't have a credit card, if you cannot go and have billing related things, then you can go and create a subscription which is purpose built for student, but you need to activate it using your student email ID, and that verification is needed. It doesn't need a credit card activation, but then it just need a student verification using your college or university's email address. Next one is the different type of subscription that can be obtained. So you can get the subscription from the reseller partner, but then most of the organization, they go and create their own account, and they get the enterprise agreement from Microsoft directly. So enterprise customers, they can make a bulk purchase of subscription without an upfront monetary commitment. Okay, so EA agreement is the most common, but you can also get the subscription from purchase it from resellers or different partners, and get it applied. So personal free account is the way to start for beginners, whoever who want to learn, or whoever want to do some proof of concept testing. They can create a personal free account and explore it. But if you are a corporate, if you are creating it for official use, then you need to go and get the enterprise agreement. Or if you want to go through your partners who was already doing an IT support, they can also add their managed services and provide better support for on top of your regular thing. Okay, this is what I thought of covering. Okay, so we discussed about what are the different subscription available, how to get them. We discussed about the different strategies that are available, how you can mix the strategy for a particular large enterprise, and what is the naming convention that you can follow. And then we discussed about the different samples that you can create. And we also talked about the business priorities that can keep increasing our subscriptions, and then the considerations around subscription, the principle around subscription, and what exactly the subscription is. Okay, thank you for listening.